All right, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to #United. Today's an important video. We are talking about this decision to relegate ourselves. Obviously, it's caused somewhat of a reaction, both in our fan base and outside of our fan base as well. What's going on? Have we lost our minds? Have I gone crazy? Hopefully, we're going to address as much of that as possible in this video. We asked you for your questions. You sent in many of them. Obviously, we don't have time to answer them all, but we're looking at the best, most pertinent ones, combining a few to try and address the things that you guys want to know. We released a statement, which I think explained our situation fairly well. However, it's a long statement. A lot of people don't read it or maybe don't understand it, and that's fine too. We told the players at the earliest opportunity, you're all safe at this club if you want to be here. Then the news started to leak a little bit as players looked to get moves, which we'd said they could. You know, that was the whole point of telling them. A few people don't understand why it came out when it did, and I'm going to address that in today's video. But rather than me going on for ages, I'll answer the questions and hopefully it will come clear. First question I got here is from one of our regular fans, volunteers and investors, John Barnsdale. John and Lincoln kind of come as a package as well. He says, what do you have to say to the players that have got us and kept us in step 3, the level you dreamt of reaching, and devs who has fulfilled your aim of reaching this league? Very fair question. We actually had a meeting just last night with some of our hardcore match-going fans, of which John and Lincoln were there. Just first and foremost, before we get into the nuts and bolts of it, I do just want to make an apology to you all for the nature of how this news has come out ultimately, and explained a lot of this to them, but I know you guys want to hear the answer to this as well. Listen, it's possible for two things to be true at the same time. It's possible that this is the right decision for our club, an important decision, of which I think is the start of an exciting new chapter, but also be incredibly frustrating and annoying for the players and disappointing for the players and the management. I get all that, and I think that's fair. So what do I have to say to them is sorry, because it is, and this goes to you guys as well, those of you that have, you know, not backing this decision. I am genuinely sorry, especially if you feel hard done by or let down. I get it. I completely get it. It's an unreserved, total apology. That being said, my job is to look out for the future of this football club. We have a lot of staff, paid full-time staff that work out of this office more than ever now off the back of our raise last summer, which we'll get into further in this video. When you understand the factors that have gone into this decision, you will see that this is the best possible route forward and much better than the alternative. The alternative being what we see clubs all the time coming out and doing. Just because it happens all the time in football doesn't mean it's okay. It might be normal, but doesn't mean it's the best way of doing things. Local team, for example, Southend United. I was born right next to their stadium. Just yesterday announced a load of redundancies. They might have avoided relegation. They're actually trying to go up, if anything, from the National League, but they're making people redundant. I don't plan to do that. That's normally what happens with the relegation, as we mentioned in our statement. The reason relegation, such a dirty, naughty word, is because it usually comes with really negative effects to your business. People losing their job, loss of revenue, etc. That's not the case for us. It's the opposite of what normally happens with a relegation for a higher ranked club perhaps, because we're not like them. And I think it's really important. This is a line in the sand moment for people to decide if they want to be part of our journey. Please don't misinterpret that like it's not me appreciating the fans we've had and the role you guys have played. We were only here because of you. I completely acknowledge and appreciate that. But it's very important we're pushing in the same direction going forward. And you guys are very deliberate in your support of hashtag. And you understand why we do what we do. We're not trying to be like the rest of them, because we don't believe a lot of those clubs make sense. They're propped up by a system that is very broken. There's no one more disappointed in me that we're having to take this step back, but it's the right step. And it's a step back to make multiple steps forward. We've been waiting for the right time to announce it. There's a lot of negativity around right now, but there's a lot of positive things coming. We're going to be investing over 6 figures in our new ground, over £100,000 into the facilities next year. Not to mention the amount of money we're going to spend on trying to make it the best match day atmosphere in non-league. I think I'm probably correct in saying we're going to spend more money on that side of things, whether it's marketing or outreach, which we've never spent £1 on before. We're going to spend more money on that next year than probably any club in the history of non-league. Certainly at the levels we're playing at. That is why we need to protect our resources, and that is why we don't want to spend it all on the pitch. What do you say to people who've spent money this season watching you, gone home and away in the hopes you avoid relegation just to get relegated? Will there be compensation to season ticket holders for next season? I'm not one, but I'm curious. Yes, that's a good question as well. Something that I addressed in our call last night with the fans. 100%. Once again, I extend those apologies. I have said that to the fans on our call. We're going to be giving anyone that's ever had a season ticket a hashtag, for if it's 2018 season or now, we'll have one for free next season. Apart from Matt. No, I'm joking. I think that's a fair gesture based on the commitment they've shown to our club. These questions come up a lot. I'm combining a few questions here. Dom Sacco and Almoni and Nick asked these questions. So Dom said, what happens if you get promoted back to the Isthmian Premier next season? Are you confident you'll amass the budget you need in 1 year to compete sustainably in the league again? What are some of these new things you're trying next year? And then Almoni and Nick said, so what happens when you get promoted? Okay, really, really important questions. I can't sit here and tell you exactly what's going to happen in the summer. We're still awaiting the FA decision. They could choose not to accept our application for relegation. Most likely, they'll relegate us 1 division and potentially stop us from being promoted next year. That is something that has happened in the past. There's even some precedent of people getting double relegations, so I think that would be pretty unheard of in our situation. The point is not to go down and save money. We want to come back when we have an army of fans in the ground. You guys that watch the games or come to the games, you know how important that is. One of the questions the players asked me in the meeting was, well, would you have done this if we were sitting 5th in the league and in a push to the National League South? And the only answer I can give to that is, because it's a hypothetical, right, is, well, we're not in that position. We've learned things this year about our club as a result of having this difficult season that we wouldn't have learned had we been in a promotion race all year. We may have felt differently about the sort of budget it takes to compete at this level. We've said it so many times, but I feel like people don't really understand it or listen to it. We're about where we should be in step 3 with our budget. We're not necessarily underperforming this year. I don't think people realise how good a performance finishing 8th last year was. Likewise, no one ever seems to believe me, even though I tell them to ask the players. And I'm going to be more transparent than ever next year when it comes to our finances. I'm really going to open them up to you in a way we haven't before. We did not pay players anything at step 6 and we won the league. There's teams at step 6 spending thousands a week. We won it spending nothing. I'm not going to make the mistake. I know that Dom asked it here. What are these things you're trying next year? Of what we've done this year, which is allude to all these things that are coming. And you guys are like, look, all we're seeing on the ostensibly is the team playing badly and, you know, things that we don't like necessarily, players leaving, whatever. But rather than me sit here and list out all the ideas months before they're going to happen, I'm going to say, look, just wait for pre-season and then it will all become clear, maybe even before that. But we're going to be very different in a good way next season. So Branquinio 1997 asks, so why did you ask for a money raise if you want relegation? Right, I just want to make one thing clear. It's not about wanting relegation. It's about requiring relegation. There's a difference there. Secondly, anyone that invested in our raise last year will know I repeatedly said this is not to go towards unsustainable player budgets. That was never the case. Everything we laid out as a plan within that raise, this is part of us delivering it. You have to understand why a relegation for hashtag is very different for a relegation to a traditional football club. I believe if we're ever to reach the sort of heights that I think this club could reach, which is multiple levels higher than step 3, we have to make a step like this to get there. The money being raised was very specifically explained to go towards getting a new home. Now, we raised just around £1 million, right? Which is amazing, amazing. And my hat goes off to you guys, again, those of you that donated for helping us get there. The reality is, a ground that we require would easily cost 3 times that. Easily. We didn't raise enough to secure that ground, but we found another way to secure it and long-term stability at home that has allowed us to protect a lot of that money to invest. So some of you would then say, oh, well, then why don't you protect it, spend it on the budget? But why? Tell me, I'd put that question back to you guys. You know, if you're able to park the ego, which is something I've had to do with this decision, and not chase these dreams that we're sold in the football world, another promotion will be great. When your business model does not improve with the promotion, it actually gets worse. That will not change for us until we get fans in the ground. Someone said to me once, it's a phrase from another language that doesn't really translate, but we basically got dressed. We got our trousers on before we put our pants on, which is another way of saying we reverse engineered a football club. We built the brand, if you like, the online following before we built the community. And I think that's right. And there's a lot of good things about that, but now it's time to do the local bit. That's what we're doing now. This is good. This is good news. You might not believe me or agree with me, but it is. We got the thing we've been chasing for 10 years, guys. We have a permanent home. Now it's time for us to smash it in real life the way we smashed it online. When you combine those two things, we become a very powerful club. What we can't do is rubberneck and do what other clubs, all of which are losing a lot of money every year, by the way, and have no other way of existing. That's the only way they can do it. We can't just look and copy them because we want to keep up with them because they tweeted us something mean, or, you know, they've got an owner that's just throwing a load of money that is generated from some other business at it. That's not us. It will probably never be us. So in answer to your question, Branquinio, this is exactly what we said would happen. We might not have said we need to get relegated in the race. We didn't necessarily know that was a thing back then. We hadn't had the experience that we've had this year, but we believe it's the right route forwards. Cal Talks NL says, do you think the club's rapid rise, both on the pitch and on social media, has led you to maybe over-anticipating the numbers through the gate, hence the struggle now? Or does the number on the gate have zero influence on this announcement? I think I've already explained how the number on the gate does influence it in a way. Over-anticipating, I think you could maybe argue that. I mean, it's impossible. We made our 5-year plan before we played a game of league football, or non-league football, if you like. The numbers slowly rose until we got to step 4, and then they stopped rising for whatever reason. Has that impacted things? Potentially, yeah. I think you don't know until you know. No one knew what hashtag in step 3 was going to look like until they got there. No one can sit there and say they had a prediction on that. The move to Aveley has made things hard. I'm not going to lie. It has been a very difficult time, not just because our performances on the pitch and the lack of support we've got at the ground, but the way we've been treated by our landlords. It's unacceptable. In my opinion, if this was a private residence that was being rented from a landlord, they would not be allowed to treat their tenants the way that we've been treated. We're in a dispute with them right now over it, and it was essential for us to get out of there after the back of this season. Obviously, with the raise, we had the ability to go and source the ground. We had lots of opportunities, and we think Redbridge is the best one by far. There's a lot of rumours going around about a potential merger. People have heard about this. It's a discussion we've had and decided not to do this season, only really because we haven't really worked with Redbridge yet. Nothing against them. We think they're great, by the way. They're helping us out a lot, and we can't wait to work with them. It's not something we're taking off the table, and I think there's a lot of positives that could potentially come from that. A merger is something I've always had on my radar for hashtag. We've had loads of conversations over the years about it that haven't materialised for whatever reason, but there's a lot of rumours going around, and they are rumours, because there's a reason if there's something being said about hashtag that you haven't heard from us, because it hasn't happened, guys. Like, we tell you stuff when it happens. We can't tell you stuff that is either under NDA, so we're not allowed to talk about it. That's a non-disclosure agreement, if you're not aware. Legally enforceable. Or it hasn't happened yet, and it might never happen. There's a lot of people that think they're in the know that will spread rumours, some of which are in positions of power, and they really shouldn't be doing that. And the only reason they know things is because of a conflict of interest in their role. I think some of you will know who I'm talking about, involved in the league. But they spread these rumours, and they're not true. But that starts to impact our football club, even though these rumours are untrue. We will only tell you stuff when it is true, guys. And the reason you haven't heard about a merger is because we're not doing one. If we're going to look at doing one again next season, which we are still interested in, that will be a discussion that I will have with you guys as and when we're ready to do so, and I'll have with our local fans, and we can look at it. So Simcut said, evening Spence, obviously sad about the news, but I do trust you and the others. Thank you, Simcut. How much did the Hummel issues, TGI Friday's administration, and the move from Bowers and Pitsy to Aveley impact the club? Were these big factors in the reason to have to drop down a step? So I think I've covered some of that. Just to be clear, I think TGI Fridays went bust after our sponsorship with them finished, so I wouldn't say that impacted us. Although we did obviously have to find a new women's sponsor, but we went from Fridays to Canna, who are a great partner, and obviously we have Football Manager now. But the Hummel one, for sure, man. I think we're still feeling the effects of it, in all honesty. Just imagine we had 200,000 debts that were supposed to be paid to us that we never got in that year that we went up. And then we actually had 3 more years of that deal that we never got paid for. So imagine a world where that deal had actually lived up to what it was contracted to be. Yeah, we could be in a very, very different situation. The club would be better off. And, you know, we were very, very unfairly treated there. Lots of clubs got stitched up by Elite UK's behaviour. But we were by far the sort of smallest and the most vulnerable club. All the rest were being like, you know, European level clubs. I think we're still feeling the effects of it in a way. Should we have not pushed through with the promotion that year when that deal died? I still wouldn't change that. I've told you about things I'd go back and change. I still would push through to step 3 because we only know the things we know because we did that. And even though some of these things we've learned might seem like negatives, I don't look at it like that, guys. I really don't. Everything you learn is a blessing, ultimately, because you're more informed going forward. If you are constantly making the same mistakes over and over again, I think that's a problem. But we haven't been in that situation. I've got my little lad every day now, almost disappointed when he doesn't lose to me at stuff, because I have ingrained in him that losing is learning, and there's no such thing as losing. You win or you learn. And I think that's what we've been able to do a lot, because we're learning so much, because we're treading untrodden ground. So I wouldn't not push through with the promotion, but I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that the Hummel deal didn't really hurt our business. It did in a massive way. Sean Tippins has said, why now? Why not announce at the end of the season? This is a very good question. Seems a bit weird timing. Players could have just plodded along to the end of the year. You said nobody's being released, etc. So yeah, this is really important. Again, it comes back to some of the nuances of non-league. There are deadlines, right? So 31st of March was the deadline for applying for relegation. So we had to do it before then if it was something we wanted to ensure happened this summer. it's not something you could do at the end of the season, even though the FA might make their decision on the application before the end of the season. We had to do it before then. There's also a deadline, which is the player registration window, which was a few days before that. We put our players first, which I don't regret, giving them the chance to leave. Some of them took it. Luke May Parrott took it, but that move might have happened anyway. He's gone up a level. We're very proud of him, and he deserves that move. So that's not a bad thing. But there wasn't an option to like not announce this or wait to the end of the season. Once it was in motion, we had to announce it, and the league ultimately forced our hand when we did it. But we told the players before that. And once we told the players, it started to leak around non-league. Is there another long-term plan, like the 5-year plan we had to get promoted 3 times in 5 years? Also, what sort of things will be implicated at home games next season, as there's a lot of talk of fan engagement. Appreciate you might not be able to go into specifics. Onwards to next season. I love that energy. So, yes, there will be a plan, which I'm happy to sort of verbalise and share with you guys in due course. If there was a number attached to a 5-year plan now, it would be much less about what level we're going to play at, and it would be about the amount of people at home games regularly. We're aiming big, guys. I'm not saying it's going to happen quickly or it's going to be easy. It might take years to do this, but we don't look at even 500 people at a game as a long-term measurement of success. I want thousands. It's clubs like Dulwich Hamlet who are known in non-league for having one of the best non-league fan bases. By the way, they have 3,000 people at a game, yet they're still mid-table in Step 3. Nick Robinson, the Isthmian chairman, mentioned that in an article as almost like a reference as to like how sustainable Step 3 is. I think that's completely wrong interpretation of the facts, which is actually that you're telling me there's a club with 3,000 people making tens of thousands of pounds every single game through food and bar and gate receipts, and yet they can't get out of Step 3. They can't sustain themselves at National League level with 3,000 people. That's a problem, no? It's a huge problem. I don't look at that as a advert for the Isthmian Prem, but we need time. The good news is we've got the ideas. I believe that we have the route forward and the sort of room to go and do it and progress. We have the funds because we've protected the funds that we ultimately raised by not spending them all on the pitch, which I think people that were just desperate to compete with the clubs around them and being led by their ego would have done. And we've also not spent it on purchasing a ground. We've been able to get into a long-term home, which we think is the best possible place for us, much more affordably, so we can now invest in that ground. And you're going to start seeing evidence of this investment very soon. It's very, very exciting, the stuff we're going to have at this ground. The work has already started, but there's going to be a lot more happening in the next few weeks and months, and we will, of course, document this and share it all for you guys to see. BCFC Thomas, what will be the financial impact on the club by taking relegation? I think I've sort of covered that. How will you persuade current players to stay? Great question. So we've got to get through this season first, guys. At the end of the day, we've got 2 contracted players right now, which is the least we've had for multiple years. There was always a chance players move on this summer anyway. I think we were going to have to do some sort of a rebuild, even if we stayed at Step 3. So there will be a rebuild. And I'm going to sit down with players and find out where their heads are. Some of them have already said that they're seeing it out to the end of the season, but they will move on in the summer, as is their right. There'll be no issue or falling out with anyone that decides not to be part of the project next year. My job is to work out who's in the right headspace to be part of this new project, because it's going to take a certain kind of character, not just because of the things we'll be doing as a club, but the situation we're in. We don't know if we'll be able to get promotion next year. So we need to find other ways to incentivise players if that's the case. And we need other things to play for, which I have ideas on. And if you remember the first 2 years of this club, we had pretty good success not having anything to play for. Jay asks if all our league games will be null and void, and how does this affect the teams in the playoff relegation positions? No, so we're not like quit the league. We're still playing our games. Our league's results still stand and future results stand. It's just a case of essentially wherever we would finish in the league, we would take one of the relegation slots, essentially. So really we're saving a team from relegation potentially, unless we finish in those spots ourselves. This is the thing we're getting a lot. They're saying, like, has it brought the competition into disrepute? I would argue what everyone else does in this situation is way worse. What every other club would normally do is they would not look out for the players. They'd cut budget, potentially after the registration deadline, so these players who need the income aren't going to get any money for the rest of the season because they can't change clubs. We gave the players the chance to go, and anyone that did choose to stay, we are not cutting budget. We're paying people the same as we would have before this decision. Right, this is a question we've had a lot from Nicolou. He says, is Keefey leaving, Joe Keefe, linked to this decision about relegation? First of all, we haven't done a proper send-off on YouTube yet for him. We did it on socials, but I'm going to take this opportunity now to say thank you again to Joe Keefe, who's been with us, I think, for 7 years, roughly, A lot of promotions have come under his belt. I think only the Step 6 promotion he wasn't with us for, but he was with us for the other two. Been around the world with us, obviously club legend really. He made the decision to leave. He's not linked to this, guys. We hadn't communicated this decision. It's his own decision. He made the decision to step away. I spoke to him, but I haven't really got a lot more than that to give you, and based on what he said. He's not taking another job that I'm aware of. And I think he just wanted a break, or maybe not to be part of the club ongoing. Like, it's all amicable. There's no negative energy there, and we wish him the best. But there's absolutely no link, as far as we're aware, to this decision because he wasn't aware of it. So it's just a coincidence in the timing, I think. You know, we have been bad this year, and we've been in a relegation scrap. And I think he wasn't happy with the way things were going. That's as much as I know, really. And it's a shame that it's ended the way it has, the timing of it. And that is regretful. And that's a Joe Keefe decision, ultimately. But we do thank him for everything he's done in this club. And yeah, we maybe wouldn't be where we are without him. So Joe Keefe, thank you very much. Shadman7000. With that announcement being made, is it not out of the world to think several of your top players will be poached by teams in higher divisions? How are you guys planning to deal with that? Right, first of all, no one can leave now for the end of the season. The registration window's closed, okay? But yeah, we saw Luke Parrott move up, for example. There's always a threat of players being poached by teams in higher divisions. We don't use the word poach. We wouldn't look at that as a negative. We've never stopped players moving on, furthering their career. You have to understand, when you're lower in the pyramid like we are, that is success. That is a badge of pride to be worn when you move players on. That's kind of one of the reasons we do what we do, guys, is to give people a platform to better themselves and help us recruit the next potential wonder kid. Virtuals Riley says, so you're basically saying you can't afford to stay in a league despite having a significant following from social media, selling shares in the club, and having brand deals. You're probably earning a lot more than other clubs in your league. Okay, so it's really important to differentiate between revenue and like cost of operations here. So we definitely earn more than probably every club in our league and most leagues above us within reason in terms of our sponsorship deals. I'm never going to deny that. None of them spend anywhere near what we spend on content, guys. We've got like 14 people full time making content for you guys now. You know, and I don't think we get the credit for that it deserves. You know, and we added women's content this year. We've added short form in a big way this year. You know, we had one day recently where we got more views across hashtag channels in one day than we had in our previous best 7 days. So the numbers are going up, and they're going up because we've doubled the size of our media team, but we've doubled the costs as well. So that money comes in and it goes straight back out. Certainly since we've been at step 3, we're definitely not earning more than our clubs. Like, if we have a good year, we break even. Sometimes we make a small loss now, and that's something we're trying to protect and correct. We also have sponsorship deals, like all sponsorship deals, that come up for renewals at certain times, right? So we're very lucky. Some of our partners have been long-term partners, lots of 5-year deals. But some of them are coming up for renewal either this year or next year. So it's really important we're doing the best things that hashtag can do to be in a position of strength when negotiating those deals. I think we've got away from the good things that hashtag do in recent years because we've become so hyper-focused on just being a football club at step 3 and trying to almost survive there, that we've lost that je ne sais quoi that makes hashtag what it is. We're getting it back, and we're getting it back in a big way. Stuart and Holly have said, what is the impact going to be on hashtag United Women and their budget? I'm really glad you asked this question. I understand it's not the most important thing in this announcement, but it's something I was actually being a bit disappointed that we haven't been given any credit for, because I don't know many cases of football clubs that have chosen to relegate their men's team and not their women. We've put our women's team first ultimately because they play at a higher level, and maybe surprising to you, 3rd tier women's football is actually cheaper than 7th tier of men's football, and we're able to compete there for a lower cost to the club. So we've put our women first, and we're very proud of that. And we remain very committed to women's football. And I think if we had cut budget in the women's game, which we never questioned at one moment, I think we'd have had a lot of critics for doing that. Yet I'm not hearing any plaudits really for us protecting our women's side, which I think we deserve. Shaz Hannum 8 says, surely this is a realisation you've previously spent too much money in the leagues where there was little money flying about, and now you've made it too far, you don't have enough to sustain it. Tarnishes previous promotions big time. I think you're completely wrong, Charlie. We have never spent too much money. I've explained this already. We've been promoted without spending anywhere near the most in the league. Like, that again deserves huge credit. We've always had a responsible budget. I think there's a misnomer here, which is like that we want to go down so we can like walk the league with some huge budget in that level. That's not what we're trying to do, guys. This idea that we just don't like that we're not winning games as much is not true. We don't like that it's not sustainable. Okay, it's very important to differentiate between those two things. The budget we have at this level is not sustainable. The budget will be smaller next year, the wage budget. But we think that is a level that we can sustain based on our economics, based on the revenue models of our club. I think it's a really dangerous game to play, particularly with some of the decision makers in this. I don't know if they'll see this or not at the FA and the Isthmian League, to sort of say, no, you need to stay in this league because of this, that and the other. Like, everyone likes to preach sustainability and how important it is. But actually, when they're faced with a decision to be made, most people just go the traditional way and have this kind of idea of this promised land of promotions. Listen, no one wants to get promoted more than me, but it has to be not at the expense of the club's survival. How have we forgotten that? I feel like it's a microcosm for the way we treat the planet now. It's like everyone wants to make money, right, and do whatever they want to do. But surely the first rule has to be we can't mess up the earth. We can't mess up the earth where we live that gives us the ability to live and breathe and do what we want. Let's have that as rule number one and everything else fall down from that. Yet you see evidence to the contrary constantly, particularly at the moment. Football's kind of the same, guys. There's this like golden rule. The golden rule should be survival of the club. I've had a lot of people, not just from our club, from other clubs, whether it's players, officials, owners, reach out to me and go, I get it. I love what you're doing. Well done for making a stand. We believe everything you said in your statement. And I know those people are out there. I'm not sitting here on some siloed, like, individual mindset. People that understand football and understand everything that's wrong with football, they understand what we're doing. So Rob, number 3, has said, seems unfair to take 3 points off a team who are actively trying to stay up when you've predetermined to take relegation. How does that work? So that's reference to the win we had against Canvey, which was after we told the players we wanted relegation, right? Is it unfair on Canvey? I mean, is it not an advantage to them going up against a team that know they're going down? Should they not have found it easier to beat us? Not my fault they didn't. If we stay up on the pitch, which I think is about 50-50 right now, if we do, we are actually gifting someone a spot at step 3 that they didn't earn. And I'll have critics telling me that's not right either. You know, there's going to be critics either way, guys. And then finally, ISA 1226. If you don't have money, just sell players and get cheaper ones. And then maybe you get relegated, but at least you tried. I'd really like a specific explanation as to why you didn't just do that. This is something we really struggle with at this club time and time again, is trying to toe the line between being really like informative and explaining to you guys how non-league works, but also not like taking the fun out of it and getting away from the football, because there's so much misinformation about how this stuff works. We don't have players to sell, right? You've got to be a contracted player to be sold. We've sold some women's players, yes. Never sold a men's player. We've had some compensation. The only money we've ever had for a sale of a man is Tom Lees, the esports player. So there's no money to be made from selling players. What you're essentially saying is what I've talked about, which would have been releasing players and getting players on less money or no money in, which would have been a guarantee of losing games. I don't know, guys. You let me know in the comments. Would you have rather seen that? Would you have rather seen, if you get on board, which I know some of you won't, with the idea that this relegation was necessary, would you have rather seen us cut budget, release players that are club legends, players that have played hundreds of games for the club, players that have got babies on the way, especially given the fact that they might not have been able to get a club, so they would have lost income for the last few months of the season, and us put kids out and get battered every week? Or would you rather seeing us do what we're doing now? I know there's a third option. Some of you say I'd rather you not got the relegation, Spence. If you take that one off the table for a second, I'd be surprised if you wouldn't choose the one we're doing. That concludes this question and answer session. I know there's probably some more questions out there. We'll try and do some more in the coming weeks and months. There's going to be more news coming out the club soon. There's going to be a reaction to whatever the FA decide, of course, and whatever happens with our season. We've also got TST coming up, which we're very much looking forward to again, playing in the mixed tournament. Probably, at least statistically, the best chance we've ever had at winning $1 million, because it's going to be a lot less teams taking part in that tournament. Men and women representing the tags at that one. We've got more interesting pre-season trips planned and some big games planned. Whatever the outcome, next season is going to be massive. There won't be a dull moment. The question is, are you going to watch and are you going to stay with the tags? I hope the answer to that question is yes. Time will tell. Don't go changing. Up the tags.